Queen Elizabeth II through Australian eyes. Then Savage River. Later, all new Silent Witness. Log into ABC iView for more great series.
The first new monarch in 70 years.
God save the King!
Charles III has been proclaimed King of Australia after an ancient accession ceremony was beamed to the world for the first time.
I shall strive to follow the inspiring example I have been set.
Hip hip! Hooray!
United in grief, the Prime Minister announces a public holiday for Australians to mourn the death of Queen Elizabeth. Brothers in arms, an emotional tribute from the new Prince of Wales and an unexpected show of support with his estranged brother Harry.
Thank you, everyone.
And thousands turn out to farewell the Queen in Scotland, with a royal cortege taking the former monarch's coffin from Balmoral Castle to Edinburgh. Hello and welcome to a special edition of ABC News Sunday. I'm Jeremy Fernandez. Charles III has been proclaimed our new head of state, with the Governor-General saying the new sovereign symbolises the dawn of a new era. Tonight the focus returns to Queen Elizabeth. These are live pictures of Balmoral Castle in Scotland. The Queen's coffin is about to be moved in a royal procession to Edinburgh. Crowds have turned out to pay their respects. There are similar scenes across the UK, including in London, where our network presenter Mike Rowland is at Buckingham Palace, standing by.
Good evening. The historic accession and celebration of King Charles has given way to the sombre affair of moving Her Majesty the Queen in a highly organised plan full of tradition, logistics and protocol. Nick Dole is at Balmoral Castle, where the Queen's coffin is being moved. Nick, take us through the mood there.
Hi Michael. Well, for communities here at Balmoral, it is a sad day because while the Queen was the monarch, she was also a local here. People would see her coming by here, going to the church just down the road. Some would see her taking walks by the River Dee or in the mountains around the Balmoral estate. And so from that perspective, they're just glad they can be here to be part of the Queen's final journey. It's a beautiful misty morning here in Balmoral, and very soon we're going to see the Queen departing the castle for the last time. The Queen's gamekeepers have been selected to move her coffin from the ballroom to the hearse. Soon we'll see the hearse making its way through the front gates and past that sea of flowers which has been growing hour by hour as more and more people come here to pay their respects. It's going to make its way down this road where the locals are gathering, and many thousands more are in villages dotted all over the Scottish countryside. The cortege will move to the east of the country to Aberdeen before turning south and heading for the capital. It's a 6-hour journey, and this is just the beginning of the Queen's farewell to Scotland and Scotland's farewell to her.
Nick Dole will come back to you shortly as the Queen begins her final journey back here to London. Australians will be given a public holiday to mourn the Queen. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has announced a national memorial service will be held on Thursday, September the 22nd. A new era in Canberra as King Charles is proclaimed Australia's next monarch. Tom Lowry has more.
Under the bluest Australian sky, an old ritual to proclaim a new king.
King Charles III, by grace of God, King of Australia and his realms and territories.
Generations gathered outside Parliament House for a ceremony not performed for 70 years.
With hearty and humble affection, we promise him faith and obedience.
Taking on some new traditions and updating an ancient anthem. As one monarch is fondly remembered,
at a time of turbulence and change, the Queen was a reassuring presence. She was a constant.
She was the best imaginable constitutional monarch. She knew that the strength of her position derived from the consent of the people who called her Queen.
Some gentle advice too for the new king, to keep up his advocacy on the causes closest to him.
If I may say so, these commitments around net zero have never been more vitally important.
King Charles, of course, has been very active and outspoken on issues such as the need for the world to challenge climate change and to act on climate change.
Should he continue that?
In my view, that would be appropriate.
A sentiment not entirely shared across the political divide.
He will have very strong views on this issue and many others, I'm sure, but I think the point he made in his speech yesterday was that he now, as the Queen did, doesn't express those views on a day-to-day basis.
A national day of mourning will be held on Thursday, September 22nd, days after the Queen's funeral in London. It will be a public holiday and a memorial service will be held here at Parliament House. Until then, the building will join other landmarks around the country, with illuminations celebrating the life of Australia's longest-serving sovereign. Tom Lowry, ABC News, Canberra.
Australia's National Day of Memorial will take place after the funeral, so both the Prime Minister and the Governor-General can attend. It's been announced here today the Queen's funeral will be held at Westminster Abbey on Monday, September the 19th. Our Europe correspondent Isabella Higgins is at the Abbey for us tonight. Isabella, good evening to you. What further details do we have about the funeral?
Well, Michael, we know this will be a ceremonious and stately affair with heads of nations from around the world coming here to remember the life and service of a Queen. Senior UK politicians and former Prime Ministers will also be in attendance. On the day of the funeral, the Queen's coffin will move from Westminster Hall here to the Abbey on the state gun carriage of the Royal Navy, with the new King following behind in close procession. Now, just hours ago, Charles III was formally proclaimed King here in London at St James's Palace in a ceremony that dates back centuries. We've also seen a surprise showing of unity from Prince William and Prince Harry and their wives. They appeared together at the gates of Windsor Castle to thank well-wishers and to view floral tributes.
A day for centuries-old pomp and ceremony. This is the first time the rituals held in the throne room of St James's Palace are televised to the public. The Accession Council, including a number of former Prime Ministers, are there to pledge their allegiance.
God save the King!
God save the King!
I shall strive to follow the inspiring example I have been set in upholding constitutional government and to seek the peace, harmony and prosperity of the peoples of these islands and of the Commonwealth realms and territories throughout the world.
All watching on as King Charles III signed the proclamations. Outside, the proclamation of the new King's reign issued by the Garter King of Arms.
Our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III.
And just like the Middle Ages, the official news of the new King rang out across London.
Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
The news was also shared by crowds via a more modern invention.
Oh, it's a moment in history, isn't it? We've lost a monarch and we're gaining a new monarch at the same time. I mean, it's both sad and it's transformational as well.
The new King again met adoring crowds, which swelled with the weekend.
I think he's got big shoes to fill, but he seems like he's kind of kind and done lots of charity. So yeah, I think he'll be good.
Buckingham Palace is still the focal point for a nation coming to terms with loss and change.
At the moment of King Charles's proclamation, there was a palpable sense of excitement here, but it captures the tension and duality in these 10 days of national mourning as the public goes from celebrating a king to commemorating a queen.
I try to control my tears. You know, I'm really sad. She's a backbone of the country.
And a surprise for the crowds outside Windsor Castle. The new Prince of Wales, William, and his wife Catherine appearing publicly alongside Prince Harry and Meghan for the first time in years.
It's a really strong sense of unity, I think, for the royal family, and it was really lovely to see. Very lovely to see. That was a pleasant surprise.
The four took their time thanking well-wishers and admiring tributes. The next in line to the throne releasing his first statement since his grandmother's death, saying, "I knew this day would come, but it will be some time before the reality of life without Granny will truly feel real."
Bye everyone, thank you so much.
One of the world's most watched families uniting in grief.
Isabella Higgins reporting from Westminster Abbey. Now, as we've just seen, the Queen's coffin in the hearse has left Balmoral Castle. Nick Dole at Balmoral Castle. Gee, there have been so many solemn moments, haven't there, since the Queen's death was announced on Thursday night local time, but these pictures we're showing our viewers now are particularly moving.
Yes, and this was such an important area to the Queen. She often spoke about how she loved the villages around Balmoral, how she loved the countryside, and the feeling here was reciprocal. And I think you can see that in the pictures we're seeing, so many people turning out to see the Queen. The procession is moving quite slowly, and the idea is that it will slow down quite significantly when it passes through the villages to give people a chance to pay their respects. Travelling with the coffin are also senior members of the royal family. I saw the Queen's daughter, Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, and she'll be playing an important role in this because she will be accompanying her mother throughout much of the trip, including the trip later from Edinburgh to London as well. So this is a really important time for people in this area, the last time that they will see the Queen depart the Balmoral estate. It's making its way east to Aberdeen, where there's going to be large vantage points set up for people, expecting potentially thousands to gather en masse in certain areas. They've been asked not to throw flowers onto the road so that the procession can continue, but there is a real outpouring of love and affection for the Queen and the royal family too at the moment, who of course are dealing with their own private grief.
Nick Dole at Balmoral Castle, thank you. At the end of that 6-hour journey, the Queen's coffin will arrive at the Palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh, as Nick mentioned. From there, Alison Horn, our correspondent, reports. Alison, good morning to you. So, good afternoon to you. As we've seen, big crowds, lots of emotion at the Castle of Balmoral. What's the mood like there?
Well, Michael, it's relatively quiet at the moment, but as you mentioned, it is still about 6 hours until the Queen's hearse will arrive here at the Royals' official residence in Scotland, Holyrood House. We are expecting thousands of people, however, to line the streets to see the Queen on this final farewell for what many people have described as an incredibly touching time for them, saying farewell to a woman who they consider to be not only a monarch, but also a valued member of this community. Edinburgh will be the final destination on the Queen's farewell tour before her body is returned to London.
The royal family in mourning at Balmoral Castle, taking comfort from each other and the people the Queen spent her life serving.
Andrew came by and I asked him how things were, basically, to be honest, and he said, well, they've given us one day.
One final day together before the Queen is moved to Edinburgh. Scotland's capital is preparing for its final visit from Her Majesty, who'll arrive at her official residence, Holyrood Palace, before being moved to the city's St Giles Cathedral. Liz Henderson has met the monarch several times in her service as a Queen's chaplain. She stayed with Elizabeth and the royal family at Balmoral.
From the moment that I entered the room, and the Queen was the first person you were introduced to in the room, she was the one who absolutely worked to make you feel at ease. The children were next door in a room, for example, and you could hear them. And the Queen said at one point, well, listen to the noise of the children. And it was with a wonderful twinkle in her eye, which said, and nobody's going to do anything about it.
She now becomes a King's chaplain and believes her new sovereign will garner the same following as his mother.
Scotland needs King Charles III. I feel that the country needs him. I feel that he is and has been probably unnoticed as a man of vision, who is very much of the moment.
When the Queen is moved here to St Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh, she'll lay in rest for 24 hours, a chance for the public to see her coffin and say a final farewell.
Thousands are expected to pay their respects in a city touched by grief but commemorating life.
Alison Horn reporting there. Thousands expected to pay their respects, as Alison mentioned, in Edinburgh. Let's finish by going back to Nick Dole and these aerial pictures of the Queen's coffin on its way to Edinburgh and eventually back here to London. Nick, so many people turning up to pay their final respects to the monarch.
That's right, and it's fitting, isn't it, that it's such a beautiful day for this countryside is something that was so close to the Queen's heart, and as the cortege snakes its way through the Scottish countryside, there are many opportunities for people to pay their respects. While the focus right now is on the Queen, I have heard quite a lot of people talking about the royal family and also what Charles must be going through right now. He, of course, is expected to go to Edinburgh later to meet his mother's coffin, but he is dealing with the extraordinary balance of taking on this new role, speaking to his people as the king, but also dealing with his own private grief. And I think from what people have been saying over the last couple of days, they are heartened by what they heard from him, the way that he plans to take on this duty, the way that he plans to continue the proud traditions that his mother set.
Nick Dole at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. So that's where we end tonight's coverage of the Queen's procession here. Beautiful day here in London. Lots of people turning out at Buckingham Palace to pay their respects, to mourn the Queen, but also celebrate King Charles. And as Nick said, very tricky balancing act for the new King, mourning his mum in full public view, but getting down to business to ensure the transition is as smooth as possible. That's where we leave you from Buckingham Palace in London.
Back home now, and as part of Commonwealth conventions, the states also have to officially proclaim the new king. Around the country, ceremonies have been held to confirm King Charles III in each jurisdiction. Thousands travelled into Sydney's CBD today to be part of the occasion.
A salute from Sydney shores as the city stands still for the new sovereign. At the country's oldest parliament, thousands gathered and dignitaries assembled for a ceremony few had witnessed in their lifetime.
The Honourable Margaret Beazley, Governor of the State of New South Wales in the Commonwealth of Australia, and members of the Executive Council do now proclaim Prince Charles Philip Arthur George to be King Charles III.
This was New South Wales's part in Commonwealth conventions and proceedings.
With hearty and humble affection, we promise him faith and obedience.
The state's cabinet had met earlier at Government House to formally recommend the governor make the official proclamation.
Today, we pause this period of mourning as we celebrate the accession of King Charles III as King of Australia.
The Premier wanted to share that sentiment on Macquarie Street. So too did the Governor. But there were those still reeling from the death of Elizabeth II.
It's a big moment in history.
Others were there to witness the occasion.
We are so excited and happy. Kid wants to come and see how all the process goes on.
I think it's an opportunity to have a new relationship and start a new bond and move forward together as two different countries, maybe. Who knows? It's exciting times.
A time of change.
God save the King.
God save the King!
At the start of a new reign. Ashley Raper, ABC News, Sydney.
Queen Elizabeth visited New South Wales 12 times during her long reign. Many of those visits including trips outside Sydney to regional parts of the state. Those who lined up to catch a glimpse of the monarch have fond memories of seeing her.
Nancy Moran was just 12 when the Queen and Duke of Edinburgh came to Casino. It was 1954 and just days before a massive flood devastated the region.
The Queen came and she was down on the river edge, but we looked down the bank towards her. And that's where I first saw her, and that's what started my collection of all this memorabilia.
The town was one of many regional areas Her Majesty visited over the years.
Broken Hill.
On the 54 visit, she touched down at the Royal Flying Doctor Service in Broken Hill and spoke over the airwaves to a mother at a remote property.
I am speaking from a wireless transceiver 300 miles from Your Majesty at Broken Hill. I send you all my best wishes for your health and happiness.
To have the reigning monarch assign the royal title was really a sign of confidence.
Most of the Queen's trips to the bush were by train, including to Orange in the Central West. It was on that train trip 52 years ago that there was an alleged assassination plot.
There was a large log placed on the track and a cutting there.
A sweeper train ahead of the Royals pushed the log off and a ban was placed on running the story for 30 years.
Whether it was an opportunistic act of vandalism or pre-planned, probably never be known.
The Queen continued her meet and greet completely unaware.
All hands on deck and everybody wore their best gear because it wasn't the old dirty overalls or anything like that.
Nancy Moran says now the Queen has died, she's ready to give her collection away.
Everywhere I've been, they've said, oh, look at all you've got over there, now she's gone. It's time in my life that I have to start dealing with getting rid of it.
The end of an era and the beginning of a new royal chapter. Jean Kennedy, ABC News.
An 8-year-old girl from regional Victoria with a passion for horse riding is among the last people to have received correspondence from the Queen. Olivia Akers got a special and unexpected letter from the palace on the same day the Queen died.
8-year-old Olivia Akers has a love of horses and the royal family.
I do like the Queen. Ever since I was very little, I've been liking royalty because I like Disney princesses and stuff like that.
So much so, she dressed up as the Queen for a fancy dress competition. She unfortunately didn't win, so instead she wrote to the Queen herself.
Dear Queen Elizabeth, my name is Olivia Akers. I really liked your video of Paddington Bear. Do you really eat marmalade sandwiches?
But it was her shared love of horses Olivia really wanted to convey.
My pony's name is Lady and she is an Australian pony. How many horses do you have? I like horses and I wanted her to get to know me of who I really am.
Olivia included some photos of riding her horse, Lady, inspired by the Queen's Trooping the Colour ceremony, and sent it off. The family didn't expect a reply, especially after hearing of the Queen's death on Friday.
In the morning I thought, well, we're not going to get the letter.
But to her surprise, a miraculously timed delivery arrived later that morning at the local post office.
Lo and behold, we got a letter from the Queen the day she had passed away.
In the reply from Balmoral Castle, the Queen said she was touched to know that Olivia enjoyed horse riding as well. It was to be among the final correspondence sent by the Queen.
How does that make you feel?
Kind of special. I guess I am special to my parents.
It's incredibly special and I'm sure Liv will treasure it forever.
One final letter, creating a memory that will last a lifetime. Isabella Tolhurst, ABC News, Tallygarupna.
Let's take you to other news now. After months of virtual deadlock, a rapid Ukrainian counterattack has forced Russian troops from key towns in the east. Russia confirmed its troops had retreated, but said that was to regroup. It's a sign the war in Ukraine may be entering a new phase as Russian troops scramble to hold on to the territory they've captured. Europe correspondent Steve Kinane reports.
For 6 months, many in the Kharkiv region have not seen a Ukrainian soldier until now. Everything is okay, troops tell locals, in the now liberated city of Izium.
We thought we would never see them, and then our men came. They were so handsome, so beautiful. I didn't know whether to hold their hands or to hug them.
Launched in the past week, Ukraine's counterattack in the east is paying off. Izium, once a major base for Russian forces in the area, has now been recaptured by Ukraine. Ukrainian forces pushed up to 50 kilometres past Russian lines this week, removing traces of the occupation as they liberated towns, villages and cities.
This village is almost completely destroyed. Russians occupied every third house and left huge piles of garbage.
Ukraine says it's now reclaimed more than 30 settlements in the Kharkiv region, and they're pushing deeper into occupied territory.
It's inevitable. Ukraine always comes back. The entire Donetsk region will be liberated, safe and happy again.
After remaining silent for a day, Russia eventually confirmed its troops had pulled out from around Izium. It's described this retreat as regrouping to concentrate on the liberation of the Donbass. Russia's leader praising the withdrawal during celebrations for Moscow City Day, saying its troops were doing a great job at reviving the region. Russia still holds around a fifth of Ukraine, but this is the most significant day in this war since Russia retreated from around Kiev. And it could mark a major turning point in the 6-month war. Steve Kinane, ABC News.
A magnitude 7.6 earthquake in Papua New Guinea has reportedly killed at least one person and injured several others after triggering landslides. The quake was felt across the country, prompting some people to rush outside. Roads cracked and buildings were damaged. Some areas lost power. The PNG Prime Minister James Marape says authorities are still assessing the damage and that the army is on standby if it's needed. A burst water main on Sydney's lower north shore has left residents in several suburbs without water or little pressure. It slowed traffic at a busy intersection in Lane Cove. The fault has affected 8 suburbs, including Wollstonecraft, Chatswood, Artarmon and North Ryde. Sydney Water has asked locals to restrict usage while crews work on the problem. Some businesses had to close.
I've been out with it for a day, just since last night, and then my work also has no water as well.
It didn't take that long for the water to come back on, but certainly all my family went off dirty this morning.
A water tanker has been sent to help supply affected properties in the area. There's no indication, though, of when the problem will be fully resolved. The COVID-19 death toll in Australian aged care homes this year is triple that of the previous 2 years. That's sparked fears of COVID complacency as the sector continues to face the grave reality of the pandemic.
Nurse Narissa Askelin believes the community no longer cares about elderly people dying with COVID-19.
And that's what I've got to say, because every day I go to bed and I think it's not right.
Many Australians might want to put the pandemic in the past, but in aged care, that's not possible. Close to 4,000 aged care residents have died with COVID-19 across the pandemic. 3,000 of those deaths have occurred this year alone. Independent South Australian MP Rebecca Sharkey worries the federal government is not facing due scrutiny.
I'd like some answers. How is it that 10,000 Australians in aged care facilities in July alone contracted COVID?
In a statement, Aged Care Minister Annika Wells says every aged care COVID-19 death is a tragedy. She pointed to the government's winter management plan, saying no stone was left unturned. COVID-19 has undoubtedly taught the sector some tough and tragic lessons, including the unintended consequences of lockdowns.
That caused huge additional damage to many residents who weren't affected by COVID. Physical and mental illness that flowed from that was enormous.
The enormity of the challenges the sector faces are not lost on Narissa, and she has a message.
Take care of people who have taken care of us, which are the elderly.
Care that nurses exude each day. Talia Roy, ABC News.
In one of the most brutal NRL matches in recent years, the Rabbitohs have knocked their rivals, the Sydney Roosters, out of the finals. South Sydney won 30 points to 14, with the encounter featuring a record 7 sin bins.
Facing off for survival, the Roosters and Rabbitohs clashed in a drama-charged first half.
Oh, this is hard.
James Tedesco's game ended early because of concussion. Despite 2 sin bins, back-to-back tries gave Souths a 4-point lead at the break. And the Rabbitohs came out firing in the second. The carnage continued with a record 7 sin bins for the match.
And that's Tano Mill twice, and Victor Radley's been binned twice.
With a man down, South sealed a memorable victory.
Souths are into week 2, the Roosters season is done.
The Rabbitohs will take on the Sharks, who lost to the Cowboys.
Obviously they're disappointed, but they also know we've still got another shot next week, so we'll have to dust ourselves off.
After 90 minutes of play, North Queensland and Cronulla were locked at 30 all.
And still no advance of the score.
Until Cowboys' Valentine Holmes slotted a 45-metre field goal to secure the 2-point victory.
You better believe he did!
And a preliminary final at home in a fortnight.
He just likes the big moments and the big crowds, which is great. It's what you need from your best players.
A monumental upset.
The Raiders eliminated the Storm in Melbourne.
The Raiders are so close!
Canberra's 28-20 win booked a semi-final against the Eels next weekend.
Going into next week's game, no one expects us to win, so it's easy for us.
It's the first time in 8 years Melbourne's been knocked out in week 1 of the finals. Chloe Hart, ABC News.
The Sydney Roosters hold on to the number 1 spot in the NRLW ladder after securing a narrow 18 points to 16 victory over the Newcastle Knights at the Sydney Football Stadium. The Roosters dominated the top of the table clash, taking a 12-0 lead at half-time. The Knights fought back in the second, crossing for 3 straight tries and in front by 4 points with just 7 minutes remaining. The Roosters star Isabel Kelly sealed the win with a near length of the field try, but the captain wasn't impressed with her side's performance.
Setting sail for the try line, Isabel Kelly eases down.
They were the better team on the day, I believe, as well. So it's just going back to the drawing board and, looking at what we can learn and be better at.
The Knights are on equal points with the third-placed Dragons, with 1 round to go before the finals. Collingwood's remarkable transformation under coach Craig McRae continues, comfortably beating Fremantle to progress to a preliminary final against Sydney. In front of 90,000 fans, the Magpies' pressure was too much for the young Dockers, who farewelled one of their greatest players ever.
From second last to a preliminary final, Collingwood's resurgence has been nothing short of amazing.
Finish. Collingwood conquer the Dockers.
Just a little bit of reflection mode where we're 1 of 4 teams left in the competition. Start of the year, if you thought you in the last 4, you could have got pretty big odds for that, I would have thought.
The Magpies' trademark pressure and surging run was on display from the outset as they booted the first 4 goals.
Pass to going back to Jamie Elliott, and the Pies have got 4 unanswered goals.
The Dockers tried hard but couldn't match the Magpies' intensity as Collingwood repeatedly surged through the midfield.
Elliott loves to solve a problem or 2.
We got showing up defensively, and their speed of ball movement really cut through us early, which put us on the back foot.
With no Taylor Adams, Jordan De Goey stepped up in midfield. He finished with 24 disposals, 6 clearances and a goal.
Advantage has been paid. I'm not sure De Goey wanted it.
he did.
The Pies' attention now turns to Sydney next week.
We're better for the experience. We played there 3 weeks ago. Geordie told me he didn't play, so we're much better for it. No, I think we learned some good lessons.
The Dockers are ruining what could have been as they farewelled one of the game's great servants, David Mundy's 376-game career coming to an end. Justin Longmuir keen to use the loss as motivation.
Unless you win the grand final, you leave disappointed. Whether you miss the finals, go out first week, second week, or lose prelim or lose a granny, like you're disappointed. And that's how we should feel right now.
For Collingwood to progress to the grand final, it will have to inflict Sydney's first defeat since round 16. Tom Wildey, ABC News.
In tennis, the world number 1 Iga Swiatek has beaten Tunisia's Ons Jabeur to win the US Open for the first time. Australians Storm Sanders and John Peers were victorious in the mixed doubles final. Swiatek defeated Jabeur in straight sets.
Wow! For a US Open champion with a weakness for tiramisu, this topped off the triumph.
It's so nice.
Iga Swiatek was aiming to add the US title to her French Open win from earlier this year and had all the answers in the opening set.
Oh, wow. She's made it.
The 21-year-old said it hadn't been easy, ignoring the outside noise and other surprises.
This tournament was really challenging also because, it's New York, it's so loud, it's so crazy.
Australian Storm Sanders has claimed her first major.
I can't believe we're Grand Slam champions, that's crazy.
Sanders and Peers are the first Australians to win the US mixed since Todd Woodbridge and Renee Stubbs in 2001. In El Palmar, Spain, the hometown of Carlos Alcaraz, no one's surprised by his ability to win 3 5-set matches in a row to reach the US Open final.
He was not afraid of training. He always asked for more. He trained for 2 hours and he wanted more. He wanted to keep going.
Both Alcaraz and his opponent, Norway's Casper Ruud, will be aiming for their first Grand Slam title and the #1 ranking. Duncan Huntsdale, ABC News.
Let's take a look at the weather now. Blue skies and bright sunshine in Sydney today. Temperatures coming in just above average overnight and during the day. And that's how it was overnight right across eastern parts of the state today. There's been no notable rainfall in the state's west, but partly cloudy conditions and cool southwesterly winds led to more subdued daytime temperatures. No rain in any of the capital cities today, except for a light sprinkle in Hobart. There are nevertheless some significant areas of cloud over the eastern half of the continent, spanning much of southern and northern New South Wales. For us, this cloud is not rain-bearing, but early next week, onshore winds may trigger a few coastal showers, and then late next week, a trough and front combine to potentially generate moderate rainfall in New South Wales in the range of 15 to 25 millimetres. Tomorrow, Brisbane and Canberra can expect another partly cloudy day. In Adelaide and Darwin, showers are possible, and it'll be a wet day in Melbourne. It'll be partly cloudy in much of northeastern New South Wales tomorrow, with some lengthy sunny breaks in the northern rivers. Showers are likely in the Hunter and mid-north coast, potentially reaching the border region late tomorrow. We see a southwesterly change moving very slowly up the coast, tending more variable through much of this area. In the southeast, expect a partly cloudy to overcast day with a high chance of coastal showers on the Illawarra coast. Otherwise, it'll be dry. Winds here will be west to southwesterly and light. We may also see a few showers developing about the southern half of the ranges and the western slopes. Snow is possible above 1,100 metres. In Sydney, we'll get westerly winds, seas up to 1.5 metres. The skies will clear tonight, leading to a partly cloudy day tomorrow. There's a slight chance of some coastal showers tomorrow night. It should stay dry elsewhere. Overnight lows between 5 in Richmond and 9 in the city. Tops about 21 to 22 degrees. By Tuesday, we see showers becoming likely. These will be light and temperatures go back down again into the teens. It's only on Thursday when we get some more moderate rainfalls, but these should pass quickly. And that is ABC News Sunday. We'll leave you now with live pictures from Scotland, where the cortege carrying the coffin of Queen Elizabeth II has left Balmoral Castle. Way to Edinburgh.
Next, the Queen and Us celebrate